That. I don't know where to begin since we're missing our front row, but please.
I have a couple questions on numbers. In his speech today, the president said that the U.S. was making the same commitment to Afghans. He mentioned SIV applicants, people who had worked at NGOs, other vulnerable Afghans, as he was making to U.S. citizens. Do you have a general estimate of how many people would be included in that universe of potential evacuees, to include all those groups of Afghans?
Well, let me take this in turns. As you know, we have a commitment to the American citizens who are in Afghanistan. We have spoken of our enduring commitment to those Afghans who have worked with us, and that includes our locally employed staff, that is to say, those who worked with us at our embassy in Kabul, as well as the many brave Afghans who partnered with the United States government over the course of some 20 years, in many instances putting themselves or their families at risk. This so-called SIV program is a program that this administration has prioritized from day one, and we've made very clear that we are committed to doing all we can for these brave Afghans and their families. When it comes to American citizens, when it comes to our locally employed staff, and when it comes to a certain segment of the SIV population, that is to say those SIV applicants who have completed stages of their security vetting process, we have reached out to them and we have instructed them to consider traveling to the Hamid Karzai International Airport. Now, each one of these universes, numbers are, precise numbers can be difficult to discern. We know in the SIV population that there are a number of Afghans who have completed what's called the Chief of Mission stage and who have completed part or all of the security vetting stage. Those are the SIV applicants that we've reached out to. When it comes to, and of course, their dependents. And so you know that SIV applicants are eligible to bring a spouse and minor children as well, which of course adds to the tallies. There have been a lot of questions, of course, about figures when it comes to U.S. citizens. And so it's worth offering just a bit of context there. I think, as you know, Nick, whether the country is France or Afghanistan, the State Department doesn't track the movement of American citizens.
I'm not asking about American citizens, I'm just asking about the broad universe of Afghans who would potentially come out. The president said in an interview with ABC a couple days ago, he put that number at no more than 65,000 people. There was a statement today from one advocacy group that said that the U.S. should consider airlifting out about 200,000 people. There's some estimates that there may be as many as 500,000 people who need to come out. So we know the president has a number in his head of 65,000 people for that broad universe, not talking about American citizens. Does the State Department have a number when it looks at the overall capacity, obviously, that it can get out, but how many people may want to come out?
So again, that overall number is going to depend on a few factors. First, it's going to depend on the number of people who wish to be relocated, and that includes in all of those categories. We have made contact with many of these individuals. We have indicated that if they wish to relocate, that we are offering to facilitate that for them, and that in some cases they should consider making their way to the airport compound. But the broad point here is that we have dramatically increased capacity over recent days, and this, of course, is capacity that is on top of Operation Allies Refuge, which we launched in the middle of last month to begin the airlift operation for a segment of the SIV population. What it comes down to is the fact that we are going to do as much as we can for as long as we can for as many people as we can.
Just to hammer this out, the president someone gave him a number of 65,000 people. So can you just give, I mean, clearly when you go about planning this evacuation process, you have this deadline of August 31st, you have the capacity, maybe that's somewhere in the range of 100,000 people, whatever it may be. What is the State Department thinking in terms of how many people overall are actually going to want to come out?
Those are conversations that are ongoing right now. Again, we have reached out to all of these populations, to American citizens, to Afghans who may be at risk, to third country nationals, partners who have worked with us on the ground, to, in many cases, make the offer of relocation. But before we can relocate someone, we need to ascertain that that person, in fact, wants to be relocated. When it comes to the American citizens, this task force that I talked about, what they are doing, and these are not individuals who are based in Kabul, they're based around the world. They are going through the registrations. The registrations that American citizens based in Kabul have submitted using the contact information that they have provided. At first it started with emails, but now we've moved on to personal communication and personal correspondence. And we are reaching out with phone calls and contacting them, asking about their situation, where they are, who they may be with, and whether they would like to seek relocation to the United States.
You guys are in a situation now where you have this deadline and you have the promise from the president. I just don't see how those two things can be squared if you have this promise from the president to help this massive group of people, but you have essentially now an 11-day deadline to get all that done. How are you going to do it?
We have, as you've heard from the Department of Defense, tremendous airlift capacity. That capacity has increased by the day. Right now, we are able, and you've heard the numbers today, 5,700 people, 13,000 people since August 14th, 18,000 people since the end of last month. Of course, there are several different ingredients. The most important ingredient is the people, and having the people present and alerting the right categories of people at the right time. That is something that the Department of State has been doing for several days now. The airlift capacity is another element of this, and DoD has spoken to their ability to increase that capacity over the past several days. But then the transit sites. As you know, many of these individuals we've been able to relocate have been going to Doha, Qatar, of late. But we are gratified that we have a number of countries, many of which I just mentioned, that have offered to host, whether it is American citizens who are transiting back to the United States, whether it is third country nationals, and some of them have been very generous and offered to host at-risk Afghans. I can confirm that we have begun to transfer people from Doha. The first flights have arrived at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. We expect to have other locations coming online in the coming days, which will allow us to make sure that we're able to maximize that flow. Because again, what we want to do in all of this, the metric and the only metric we care about, is how many people we are able to relocate, to bring to safety, whether that is Americans that we're repatriating to the United States, whether it is third country nationals whose relocation we're facilitating to their home countries, or whether it is to at-risk Afghans. In many cases, SIV applicants will be brought to the United States. In some cases, we have heard these very generous offers of support from partners, from allies around the world, who will be willing to host at-risk Afghans